Shhh. Digital Media presents Part 3 of The Butterfly Dragon, What Different Eyes See, Vietnam Special Edition, by Brian Joseph Johns.
Jade Oriental Hotel, Twin Fish Restaurant and Bar. Oh, that just feels so good. Zhang relaxed, her face elated with pleasure. Really? I haven't even... Dr. Briggs leaned in close to her ear. No, that's just perfect, right there. Zhang bit her lower lip. Stephen Briggs stood behind her chair, his index finger pressed against the base of her skull, penetrating slightly into one of her pressure points. They were the only two guests seated at a large table in the Twin Fish restaurant of the Jade Oriental Hotel in Hanoi, while the rest of the restaurant and bar was beginning to fill with the evening crowd. Zhang had been experiencing shoulder pain due to the lengthy flight, and Dr. Briggs had offered her some of his knowledge in acupressure therapy. I have to be honest, I only just started reading about this a few weeks ago, Dr. Briggs said as he soothed her shoulder. That's just so great, thank you, she responded, wriggling and stretching her shoulders. Anytime. Dr. Briggs took a seat beside her. I just might take you up on that, she replied. On the other side of the room, Bryce sat on the bench of a 12-foot grand piano. He played a somber interpretation of Bach as made popular by Glenn Gould, followed by some popular regional jazz, including that of Yoko Kanno. Since arriving in the hotel, they'd checked in, cleaned themselves up, and made their way down for a late dinner, where they expected to be waiting for Alicia, Valerie, Monique, and Halen. Katya and Victor had turned in for a nap, only answering the phone when Zhang had called them from the table. They assured her that they'd be down for dinner shortly, just as Alicia's call came in on the other line. Gotta go. Looks like Alicia or Valerie are on the other line. See you soon? Zhang spoke to Katya. Yes, we'll be there soon. Keep the vodka warm and the caviar chilled, Katya joked before she hung up.
Zhang speaking. Zhang answered the other line. It's Alicia. We're on our way back. Should take about an hour to get there. We're going to need your help. Everyone's help. We've got a long night ahead of us, so don't eat or drink too much. Bye for now, Alicia requested. Sure? That sounds... Zhang responded, suddenly stopping as soon as she realized that Alicia had already hung up. We're still on the clock, Zhang told Dr. Briggs. Is something up? Dr. Briggs asked. Sounds like it. They'll be here in an hour, and they'll let us know everything when they get here, Zhang assured him. The first stage. Could you excuse me for a moment? I've got to use the lavatory. Dr. Briggs got up from his chair and began walking towards the washroom. The restaurant was sparsely populated in terms of customers, even for a weekday, but there were still a few tables occupied, mostly by tourists and local office workers out for a bite after work. Briggs waved to Bryce on the way by the piano, and Bryce nodded to him as he passed. He strode the length of the bar, at the end of which was the entryway to the wash area. As he passed one of the patrons, she dropped a tiny makeup purse on the floor in front of Dr. Briggs. He immediately bent over and picked it up for the lady, handing it back to her, getting a look at her. Her eyes were piercing blue, while her nose was thin and slightly turned up at the tip. Her nostrils were underlined by a pair of full-bodied lips, glossy and red even in the dim lighting of the bar. Her hair was slightly longer than shoulder length, blonde with streaks of platinum which crowned a thin and fit early 30s body. What a gentleman! Thank you ever so much. Care for a drink? Asked the lady, her piercing blue eyes looking very inviting to Briggs. I'm with a guest, but thank you for the invitation. Briggs smiled and turned to continue his trip to the washroom. I'm Linda Delmore. She held out her hand before Briggs had a chance to leave. Linda, nice to meet you. I'm Stephen Briggs. He shook the lady's hand. Are you American by any chance? Linda asked Briggs. No, and yes, I'm a Canadian, born and raised, but I've spent the last 4 years working in the United States with peers in my field. You sound like you've got a touch of Washington in you, asked Briggs.
Close. Baltimore, actually. Truthfully, I grew up in Washington, went to WSU, majored in political science, graduated, got married, got successful, got divorced, moved to Baltimore, away from all of the political action. Go figure. Sorry, I'll let you get to your business. Linda took a sip of her cocktail. Nice meeting you, Linda. Briggs nodded as he proceeded to the lavatory. When he'd finished in the lavatory and cleaned up, he approached Linda on his way back to the table. If you'd just like some pleasant company for dinner and drinks, you're more than welcome to join us at our table. I'm sure that my guest would love the extra company. Briggs invited her hesitantly. That's awfully sweet of you. Does your guest need a drink? Asked Linda. I'll get it, thank you. Briggs addressed his waiter, ordering a gin and tonic for Zhang and bourbon on the rocks for himself. The two of them proceeded over to the table, and Briggs introduced Linda, somewhat uncomfortably. Nice to meet you, Linda. Baltimore, eh? What brings you to Hanoi? Asked Zhang inquisitively. Finalized a messy divorce. We'd been separated for about 4 years. No kids, thankfully. A house, a couple of cars, and a shared term deposit. The lawyers managed to reach a settlement 2 weeks ago when it all hit me like a ton of bricks. So I decided I wanted a vacation and a little time off to relax. So here I am. And you? Linda's face held a bit of her pain as she spoke. We're here on business, mostly, though we're certainly enjoying our spare time, aren't we? Zhang squeezed Briggs' hand. That we are. Briggs responded to Zhang's touch, moving slightly closer to her just as Katya and Victor arrived at the table. Did we miss anything? Katya asked, Victor behind her. Linda, these are my friends and peers, Katya and Victor, Pyotr. Briggs stood and introduced them. Linda Delmore, pleased to meet you. As are we. Victor pulled out a chair for his wife and sat beside her. Is that a Georgian accent I hear? Asked Linda. No, but close. A little bit. We're directly from Moscow. We're currently working with Zhang and Dr. Briggs, answered Katya. Doctor? You didn't say. Linda affronted Briggs. Not that kind of doctor. I have my doctorate in sociology and a degree in psychology. Briggs relayed to Linda modestly. Do you specialize? Linda asked him.
Yes, Southeast Asian history and philosophy from a sociological perspective, Briggs explained, clearly trying to stay away from the topic. I'm very interested to hear more, Linda pressed him. Did you know that Zhang here is a mathematician and one of the founders of a new field of study called computational biology? Briggs expertly directed Linda's attention to Zhang. Really? You're scientists? Linda asked. I do a lot work in the sciences, mostly research. Katya and Victor are doctors as well. Zhang nodded to Katya and Victor. We're doing mostly research as well, medical related, however, we're here mostly as consultants, Katya added. Linda is a political science major from Washington State University, Briggs told everyone, making Linda blush slightly. Before the divorce, I was working with Tom, my ex, for a firm as a political analyst, mostly doing gigs for big business and the media. We were a pretty established firm. After the divorce, I left, he stayed, so now I do a lot of freelancing and consulting for other firms. But I have to be honest, I'm very interested in establishing myself in Southeast Asia. So how would I do it? Linda explained her work life, then concentrating on getting more from Dr. Briggs. Just as Dr. Briggs was about to address Linda, Bryce stepped over to the table from the piano. I thought the background was suddenly quiet after all of that perfectly ambient tinkling you were doing on the keys. Linda, meet Bryce. Zhang addressed Bryce. Nice to meet you, Bryce. So how long have you been playing? Oh, for about 45 minutes, Bryce laughed before continuing. Nice to meet you, Linda. Do you mind if I pull up a chair? Bryce asked the table. We'd actually prefer it if you stayed at your bench and continued playing, Zhang scolded him. I would if I could, but I need a little food and drink. Bryce smiled, pulling up another chair and taking a seat beside Briggs. So Briggs was just going to explain to me how one would get established in Southeast Asia. Linda didn't let the topic go away so easily. You mean in political science? Asked Dr. Briggs. Yes. No. Let's just say get established. We'll talk about what to do once I'm in the door. Maybe in the South, I was thinking. Linda spoke slightly seductively, running her foot up Briggs's leg under the table.
Briggs's face flushed for a moment, but he held his attention on the topic without getting lost in sexual innuendo. Well, if you're talking about getting established here, in South Vietnam, you'd need a visa, and to apply for status as a resident or even citizenship, which you could certainly do at the right government office. Best to talk with the American embassy here in Hanoi in your case, at least in terms of the bureaucratic process involved, Briggs answered Linda.
Thank you, but that's not what I meant. I meant to really get established here and fit in enough to sell the American dream to the locals. Linda's foot tried to find Briggs' leg, which he'd retreated moments earlier. You mean like a free market? Do business here? There's already an established market system here. It's not what most people think. There's an economy driven by local capital and resources, much like anywhere else in the world. If anything, you'd be squeezing into something where you have to develop a relationship based upon trust and familiarity with the people before you could hope to sell whatever it is you're trying to bring them, Briggs explained. There's also elements of a strong infrastructure and social supports, certainly allowing for a more concerted development of society across the board, in a socialist sense, Katya added. I'd have to agree there. There are many neglects that capital markets simply miss, especially when it comes to the social aspect of society. Victor backed up his wife. You know, without educational funding, I would have had to pay for my post-secondary education myself, so I'm in support of social programs that allow for students to afford their further education. Briggs found common ground with Katya and Victor. But capitalism fuels and pays for all of that, Linda responded. That truly depends upon where you are, the people there, and the foundation upon which their society is running. If you're in a place that runs entirely on a socialist system, you're going to find very different aspects related to how that society operates when compared to a purely capitalist society, Bryce put in his perspective.
Yes, but purely capitalist systems don't pay for social aspects of society except infrastructure, and in such a case, only what they're forced to pay, which usually coincides with exactly their needs, and not necessarily the needs of a whole society. Build a road for your fleet of shipping trucks, but not for your employees to come to and from work. My own education was paid for by student loans, but because of my grades, I was fortunate enough to qualify for a bursary, which again is something that is paid for through social programs. Zhang gave her insight. And that revenue comes from trade, in one form or another, whether goods or services. If it isn't you going to a local supermarket and buying your groceries, then it's the country seeking out to purchase the resources or services of another country. The bottom line is that at some level, business is being done, and from that exchange, tax revenue pays for the social services to which you're referring. Hence, by bringing one's own business here, that's bringing the social prosperity that arises from trade via taxes. We all take part in that at some level, so you could say that what I'm bringing leads to what you're seeking. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Briggs? Linda added, having made a strong point. I'm kind of in the middle right now, though I'm very much liking the idea that most of what I need as a member of society is supported through some form of social apparatus, whereas in a capital market, it's demand that creates the pressures for aspects of infrastructure, and not everything that is absolutely needed has a high demand. Someone gets a rare disease, but because it's rare, it's not worth a doctor training for that specialization because they won't have many customers, Briggs surmised. Well, good luck paying for that hospital without capital markets and trade, Linda punctuated her point. Dr. Briggs, may we pay for your dinner tonight? It's really good having you here, and I've enjoyed the company. This offer extends to both you and Zhang, by the way. Victor offered. I can't offer you that, but I will get all your drinks if you'd consider my point, Linda forwarded. No, really, you don't have to, Briggs pleaded with them. Same here, I'm all right paying for myself, Zhang followed suit. No, I insist. Victor and Katya moved in closer to their peer and friends.
Then it's settled. Dinner and drinks on us tonight. Linda looked at Katya and Victor, throwing them a competitive sneer. We'll see about this when the bill comes, Victor responded. The mystery, the trail. The trip back to Hanoi was marked mostly by the sound of Valerie's voice as she made arrangements for the delegation to meet with their fellow representatives from Vietnam a day onward. In the interim, the Vietnamese delegation had responded by offering to have half of the delegation meet them in Hanoi, while the remainder of the delegation would meet with them in Ho Chi Minh City in the following week. This made the most sense. After all, several of the Vietnamese delegates were from Hanoi, with 2 of them being from the University Medical Hospital and another from the General Hospital in the city.
The organizer of the Vietnamese delegation itself was the health minister of Vietnam, whose offices were also in Hanoi. She too would be meeting with the Western delegation as part of this new schedule, which would still leave them with 72 hours to solve Miss Hui Van's mystery and find her baby girl, who would now be in the vicinity of 50 years old, if she was in fact still alive. Alicia spent most of her time searching the internet for any clues related to the mysterious painting and its even more mysterious creator, V. Canara. Most of her results were related to canaries and other similar avians, as the search engines misinterpreted her search term as a case of misspelling. She did find several references to financial institutions located nearby, in India, but upon further investigation she found that there were no possible links between the institution and the name from the painting. She even tried every avenue to which she had professional access, including all the private research channels, and still came up with nothing.
Monique spent most of the trip speaking with the driver, Thuc Ben. She'd even convinced him to stop the van and let her jump into the front seat, which of course facilitated their conversation even further. During their conversation, she managed to get even more information about their secretive employer, Miss Hui Van. She learned that Miss Van, as Thuc referred to her, kept her estate and affairs under an iron grip, where she left nothing to chance. She treated her staff fair and certainly never berated any of them, though if there were problems with their conduct or performance, she'd certainly let them know. As a fringe benefit of working for her, every one of the staff on her estate was entitled to a free spa in Hanoi twice a month. Monique quipped about the fact that she'd never been given a free spa in her life, hoping Haylin would overhear them. She didn't, as she appeared to be fast asleep. Monique also learned that Miss Van was obsessed with history, especially that of Hanoi and its surrounding lands, buying up every and any scrap or fragment that might be associated with it. She even hired photographers to scour all of the museums and galleries in Vietnam, thoroughly photographing anything linked to the region from the time of her own birth and onwards. She'd had an extensive search of her family history by a professional genealogist as well. When Monique asked Thuc about Miss Van's family history, Thuc remained silent, quickly changing the topic. Miss Hui Van was also an avid gardener, having an extensive plot of land where she, by herself, tended to a variety of different plant species, most of which were either flowering or bore fruit of some kind. Even at her current age, Thuc had found Miss Van several times working that plot of land with as much fervor as any farmer 50 years her youth. Thuc had observed that it was clearly something for which she had a passion, though when she was on her plot, all of the staff were advised to stay away and leave her to her peace. Given her age, Nguyen, one of the groundskeepers, and Thuc would quietly check up on her to ensure her safety. In the back of the car, Haylin lay deep in meditation, attempting to contact Welterwisp, but to no avail. Instead, her meditations led her to a densely packed market in Hanoi, where she peered upon the scene from 12 feet above the gravel and interlocked brick that made up the footing, floating as a secret observer from above.
She was looking at someone whose face was hidden behind a veil fixed to a sun hat common in the region. The subject of her gaze was most likely male. Standing nearly 5 feet and 9 inches tall, his height was at the upper bounds of the average height of most other men in the market. Haylin examined him thoroughly, observing that in one hand he had what appeared to be a papaya. The thought occurred to her that she might be seeing something that already happened, something from the distant past, Ms. Hui Van's past. The thought occurred that she might be looking at Disguise 3. She immediately thought about Ms. Hui Van and was suddenly whisked 2 kilometers away, where a young woman drove a motorized rickshaw through the packed city streets of 1970 Hanoi. On the tiny dash of the rickshaw sat a basket, within which was perched a similar papaya to the one in Disguise 3's hand. Haylin quickly surmised that this was the lady from Ms. Hui Van's story, and that she was on her way to make the exchange with Disguise 3. Upon thinking about Disguise 3, she was immediately transported back to the same vantage point from whence she'd spied him earlier. As he waited, he casually perused the closest market stall, examining the bean sprouts, cabbages, bok choy, and eels that the farmer had for sale. As he checked the stock, another man made his way over to Disguise 3. He was followed by 3 others, all of which kept their distance. The first man leaned in close to Disguise 3's ear, whispering something that Haylin, no matter how hard she tried, could not discern amidst the banter of the packed market. Disguise 3 suddenly pushed the man, knocking him clean off of his feet onto his back, and then proceeded to sprint as fast as he could. As he ran, he quickly took the papaya in his hand and began devouring it, paper message and all. Of the other 3 men, one of them checked on their fallen peer, while the other 2 began pursuit of Disguise 3. They too ran as fast as they could, knocking several market patrons down as they pressed forward through the crowd.
Disguise 3 turned down a tiny alley, running feverishly and bouncing off the walls as Halen followed him invisibly from above. He was very obviously in top shape, as he'd not slowed during his 2 minutes of full-out sprinting. If anything, he'd only picked up his pace, taking as many corners as he could along the way to put as many line-of-sight barriers between him and those pursuing him. He ran out of another alley and back out onto one of the market roads, grabbing hold of the back of a passing motorized rickshaw as he did. He quickly scaled it and laid himself flat on its roof as his pursuers emerged from the same alley. They immediately sighted him on top of the rickshaw and pulled a 2-way radio from their pocket, screaming something in Vietnamese that Halen couldn't make out. It was obvious that they were calling in backup. The rickshaw traveled at a leisurely speed, much faster than his own running pace, and he held on as they exited the market, pulling out onto one of the main roads running parallel to the Great River. From the roof of the rickshaw, he spied a row of parked motorized rickshaws. He quickly leapt off of the roof and rolled efficiently onto his feet, stopping himself quickly and turning to dash for the parked vehicles. As he arrived, he spotted an armored car speeding towards his location from 100 yards away. He quickly broke the ignition casing with his utility knife and pried the tumblers free from the switch, breaking the lock. He then jumped onto the driver's seat on the bike and started the rickshaw. It backfired once and then began running smoothly as Disguise 3 put it into gear. He sped out of the small parking zone alongside the road and pushed the rickshaw to its limits as the armored car approached. By the time he was up to the vehicle's top speed, the armored car was directly behind him. He sped along the road, quickly making a hard right, out onto a large bridge that spanned the river, nearly tipping the rickety vehicle over in the process. The armored car took its turn much wider, entering into the oncoming lane, narrowly missing several approaching vehicles as it did. The driver managed to get the heavy vehicle back into the lane following the rickshaw. It sped up as it careened back onto course in full pursuit. The rickshaw continued to flee as one of the vehicles from the oncoming lane crossed the barrier, colliding with the rickshaw, sending it spinning until it came to a stop against the pedestrian railing of the bridge. Several armed men poured out that vehicle and of the armored car as Disguise 3 got to his feet in an attempt to flee. Several shots rang out as the gunmen screamed in Vietnamese, "Stop! Put your hands up! Any sudden moves and we will shoot you!" Disguise 3 stopped, raising both his hands and keeping them well over his head. Several of the armed men slowly approached Disguise 3 from behind. As one of them got close enough, he suddenly kicked the man's knee while grabbing his arm and using him as a shield. The others kept their pistols aimed at Disguise 3 as he backed away from them, suddenly discarding the man he'd used as a shield and diving over the railing. Several shots sounded, one of them impacting his lower back as he flew out into the air over the railing until gravity took hold of him, accelerating him down towards the river 150 feet below. As he hit the water, Halen was suddenly drawn back into her own time and reality as the Dakar pulled up to the front of the Oriental Jade Hotel. She sat up in her seat, taking a few moments to center herself, until Alicia noticed. "Everything all right, Halen?" she asked her friend. "Fine. I just had another vision. I think I might have witnessed what happened to Disguise 3, Halen said, taking a deep breath and slowly letting it out. "I have some information too." Monique leaned over the top of the front seat as Tukban stepped out of the vehicle to grab their luggage. "Let's get inside where we can compare notes and bring everyone else up to speed," Alicia suggested, opening her door and stepping out of the vehicle. Valerie followed suit, her attention still focused on her tablet as she finalized the arrangements for their itinerary. The 4 of them thanked Tukban and proceeded into the hotel. After they'd checked in, they took their luggage up to their rooms and immediately left for the Twin Fish restaurant. Sinking feeling.
Zhang, Briggs, and Bryce sat across from Katya and Victor, Linda a seat or 2 down from them. Given what we know so far, we've only got 2 places to start this investigation: the Vietnam University of Fine Art or the market itself, Victor asserted.
True, but she just said that there are other factors involved which they can't share right now, Katja suggested. The University of Fine Art is the only solid lead we have to start with where we can help, leaving the four of you to investigate your other leads. Bryce found the compromise. Would you be interested in a trip out to the Vietnam University of Fine Art, Linda? Asked Zhang politely. Sure, that sounds like it could be fun. I'd love to accompany you and Dr. Briggs. I'll need a moment to freshen up, though, Linda replied as she got up and made her way to the lavatory. How's your Vietnamese? Asked Alicia. Haylin responded by assuring Alicia in Vietnamese that she remembered enough to communicate. Haylin's first part-time job as a young student was in a Toronto Vietnamese deli. There, she'd learned much of the language from its native speakers, her employers. She'd worked at the deli for 2 years before leaving to finish her studies. During that time, she'd picked up a fair bit of the language, but still languished in certain details. I have no idea what you just said. Let's hope we can at least communicate, Alicia responded. So the plan is that we'll investigate anything to do with the painting and V. Canara, following other leads if we have to, while you four follow your trail, Dr. Briggs confirmed. Exactly. If we come up with anything, we'll contact you with that information and vice versa. When you find something, let us know, Haylin advised Dr. Briggs. Getting rental cars would probably be a bad idea in this situation, as time is of the essence. We'll stick to taxis, Bryce added. Linda returned from the wash area and the two groups left together, bringing her up to speed as they ventured out of the restaurant and to the taxi park.
A sketchy memory. They loaded themselves into 2 separate taxi vans, the first van leaving for the university, and the second van remained while they figured out where they needed to go. We're trying to find a specific food market here in Hanoi. We're going to need to see a couple of them before we find the right one, Haylin asked the driver in Vietnamese. Did you say Pelican Market? Asked the driver, turning around in his seat, somewhat puzzled. Yes, the food market, Haylin responded, hearing only the word food rather than pelican. I take you to the nearest market. If you see pelicans, we stop. The driver turned around and responded in English, clearly puzzled by Haylin's earlier request. We need the food market, not pelicans, please, Haylin replied to the driver, having no idea that the mispronunciation error was hers. I'm impressed. It seems you remembered how to speak perfectly, Alicia praised Haylin. Good to know, but I really think it would be better if we had a translator, Haylin said modestly. On the way to the first market, Monique shared what she'd learned from Tukbang about Miss Huaven during their trip back to the Oriental Jade. She told them of the fact that she ran her estate with a fair but iron grip, and that she liked gardening immensely. She also told them about Miss Huaven's obsession with history and her own genealogy. Sounds as if she was looking for something specific, like she knows something she's not sharing with us, Alicia suggested. I got exactly the same feeling when we were talking to her. Rather, when she was talking and we listened, Valerie remarked sarcastically. Took didn't say whether she found anything, only that she'd spent a lot of time and money searching, Monique added. There's definitely something going on here beneath the surface. I can sense it. That's probably what's drawing me to these visions, Haylin told them. Here's the first market, but I don't think they carry pelicans, their driver told them in English as he slowed the vehicle for them to see. Haylin looked carefully, though the setting sun certainly made the streets appear much different than they'd appeared in her noon-hour vision. She looked for any landmarks that might punctuate her memory, finding nothing. Remember that this exchange was conducted in broad daylight. Wouldn't they choose somewhere that had the most cover for them? Alicia suggested. Driver, could you take us to the biggest food market and let us know when we get there? Haylin asked the driver in Vietnamese. He looked back at Haylin, very perplexed. I'm sorry, but I don't carry any tweezers. I'll just let you know when we get there, the driver replied, very confused to know.
Haylin at that point realized that it was her mispronunciation, despite being slightly confused by his reply. Despite that fact, she got the gist. The driver sped up and found a route back onto the main road, running directly towards the river. They crossed a bridge, smaller than the one in Haylin's vision, and a few minutes later they were in Hanoi's largest market district. Even this late in the evening, the market was crowded with patrons in the setting sun. There was a market stall for just about anything you could imagine, and then some for things nobody could have imagined. The air was mixed with the smell of fish and spicy food and the scent of earthen plant life. Monique's stomach grumbled as they passed a line of market stall food vendors. As they approached a small intersection in the midst of the market, Halen recognized the alley where Disguise 3 had fled. She turned her head and spied a row of market stalls very similar to those in her vision. "Stop the car," Halen blurted out in Vietnamese. "Miss, I don't have an oven mitt, but I can stop and let you out here. You could probably find one. Tweezers, too." The driver seemed very confused and even startled by Halen's request. "Yes, let us out," Halen agreed, and the car suddenly stopped. "Thank you," Alicia said in perfect Vietnamese, paying the driver. The driver smiled at Alicia and thanked her. The driver then turned to Halen, seemingly both startled and frightened by her. "Take a picture. It lasts longer," Monique defended her boss. "How'd you know how to say that?" Halen asked Alicia. "I looked it up on the internet on the way here," Alicia replied. "Clever girl," Valerie agreed. "It's my business to be clever." Alicia smiled. "And back to language school for me," Halen added with this sense of humor. "You and the driver did good. You got us here, didn't you?" Alicia offered. "We're in the right place. There's the alley that Disguise 3 used for his escape. He was standing right over here waiting for the drop-off." Halen first pointed to a nearby alley and then to the corner of a stall. "Good idea." Halen turned to see Monique ordering food from the same stall.
Monique ordered a spicy mango shrimp salad smothered in cilantro. She was able to order thanks to a clever system the stall owner had set up, with each menu item having its own picture and corresponding number in several different languages, including English. Alicia and Valerie followed suit, ordering a small helping of spring rolls between them. Halen, upon arriving at the front of the line, questioned the market stall owner. "How long has your family run this stall?" asked Halen, once again in Vietnamese. 60 year! 60 year! A young girl did her best to speak in English for them. "Do you have a relative that worked here in 1970? Halen asked the young girl running the stall. She turned to an even younger boy, probably 10 or 11. "Go! Get Grandma! Tourist needs help," the young girl ordered the boy in Vietnamese. The boy quickly ran off across to the other side of the street into a doorway where he disappeared. A few moments later, he reappeared, helping a little old lady walk over to the market stall. The lady approached the market stall, walking over to the young girl. "What do you need?" the little old lady asked. "She needs help, wants to know about history of our market stall," the young girl addressed her senior. The old lady turned to Halen and walked over to take her granddaughter's place while her granddaughter served other customers. "Were you here in the 1970s? Asked Halen in Vietnamese, her memory of the language improving, perhaps through the synergy of her surroundings. "I speak English, little bit." "Yes, I hear then," the little lady responded to Halen's inquiry in English. Halen pulled a tablet from her handbag. She popped a stylus from its side and opened one of her fashion design applications and began sketching on the surface. After about 3 minutes, she gave the tablet to the little old lady. "Do you remember seeing a man that looked like this?" Halen handed her the picture. She looked at it for a long time, bringing it closer to her face and then holding it at arm's length. She squinted a couple times before her face lit up. "I remember this man. He come a few times," the little old lady stated. "Did you ever see him with a woman?" Halen quickly asked. "No, not me. I not see, but," the little lady answered quickly and then paused.
"Another friend see? He runs small hotel nearby. I give the man in picture the address to hotel. Back in 1970, the elderly lady responded with a smile. "Is that hotel still in business?" asked Halen. "Yes, bed and breakfast now. Good for tourists. A lot of business," the lady answered. "Does your friend still work there?" Halen continued her questioning. "No, he live in apartment nearby. I give you address." The little old lady took the stylus from Halen and wrote an address on the bottom of Halen's sketch. "Here," the little old lady handed the tablet back to Halen. Thank you ever so much. Helene pulled her credit card from her bag and ran over to a small store with a cash machine. She quickly withdrew 300 Canadian dollars worth of Vietnamese money. She took the cash and ran back to the little old lady, handing it to her. Here, for you and your grandchildren, 100 for each question. Thank you for your help. Helene handed her the cash. Oh, thank you so much. Take food. Here, take. The little lady handed Helene a bag, filling it with freshly cooked spring rolls and a few banh mi sandwiches. Helene thanked the lady and joined her friends nearby as they consumed their food. I got an address for the hotel. Helene showed them the sketch and the address. I didn't know you could draw, Alicia responded, startled at her ability. It was part of the fashion design curriculum, the design part, Helene responded with a slight edge of sarcasm. Well, excuse me, Alicia replied jokingly. What can we hope to find at the hotel besides clean sheets? Monique asked. The same thing we found here, another lead, Alicia responded, shoving another spring roll into her mouth. Painting the hole. The van pulled up near the admissions office of the university grounds. Zhang was out first, evidently not into waiting for the driver to open her door. Dr. Briggs followed closely behind her. Like clowns getting out of compact car, Victor remarked, rousing laughter from his peers and the driver, too. Looks like the offices are still open, Katya observed, seeing several administrators at the front desk. This is also a gallery, so we're more likely to have an easier time seeing the painting, Dr. Briggs pointed out. I'm not much of a fan of art. I failed my art classes miserably, Linda responded as the group paid the driver and headed for the doors.
Some of the greatest visionaries in history failed their classes as well. Some of the most interesting people I know don't have half the education that I do, Bryce was quick to point out. Are you flirting with me? Linda confirmed with Bryce, blushing slightly. No, Bryce just flirts with the world. That's the way he is, responded Zhang. And when the world turned me down for dinner and drinks, that's when I met my wife, Wendy, Bryce added with a smile on his face. You flirt with the world and you're a married man too? How disgusting, Linda remarked in jest. Guilty as charged. My earlier point being that we learn 3 times as much from our failures compared to our triumphs. Bryce got the door for Linda. True, but we also lose 3 times what we gained compared to our triumphs, Dr. Briggs added. Oh, so true, but I'd still live it all again. Bryce smiled as they approached the front desk. How may I help you? Asked the front desk administrator. We're looking to get access to the gallery. Would it still be open at this time? Asked Zhang. You're in luck. Admission closes in 20 minutes and we lock the doors in 50 minutes, the girl responded. We'll take 6 passes for the gallery, Dr. Briggs requested. Wait, is there a painting on display by artist named V. Kanara? Asked Katya. That piece is in storage and not part of the current showing, the girl at the desk responded. Look, we're on an historic art tour of Southeast Asia, and this is our last stop in Vietnam. We're leaving tomorrow, early in the morning, and my son here, who is just happily married to this woman you see in front of you, was hoping to show his new wife this painting. She's a big fan of art history, and this piece is on her bucket list. Please don't let these newlyweds down. Bryce poured it on thick. I so much was looking forward to seeing that painting. In fact, that's why we came here. Zhang followed Bryce's ruse, grabbing Briggs's hand. Briggs blushed profusely and did everything in his power to contain his growing smile. I don't know, it's policy that we don't let anyone but staff into the storage vault. It's climate controlled and it's a big deal. You understand, don't you? The administrator began laying out the reasons they couldn't when one of the other administrators interrupted. Bryce? Bryce Maxwell? I can't believe this. The administrator put their hands to their head in disbelief. Do I know you? Asked Bryce. No, I'm a student here at the university in the Fine Arts program. I recently did a showing of my 3rd-year work here. It focused on technology and art. Me and my partner modeled an etching laser based upon one of your papers, the student administrator explained. Which paper was that? Asked Bryce. It was titled Quantum Entanglement and Its Applications in Interferometry, where, for the purposes of several of my pieces, my partner and I crafted a QIL, Quantum Interferometer Laser, based upon your paper. We used it to etch a pattern onto a carbon polyfiber medium, complete with a second laser head composed of entangled photons, the artist explained. Huh?
Dr. Briggs remarked. Yes, I remember writing that paper. Very remarkable. I'm impressed. How long did that take you? Bryce listened as the student explained. It took a few weeks to build and test the focusing beam. The entanglement part was a bit more complex to test than it was to build, trapping photons and ensuring they were entangled according to their relative spin. Overall, it took 2 months to build the finished QIL. We had a lot of help from the University of Hanoi Physics Department, the student explained. Very impressive. Bryce shook his head, smiling at the student's accomplishment as Zhang kicked his shin. I heard you saying that you'd like access to the vault, and I'd like to propose a deal, the student offered to Bryce, looking in turn to each of the others. Go on, Zhang responded. Well, if you would take a picture of me with Bryce by the very piece I just spoke about, I'd be willing to let you into the storage vault to see the piece you're requesting. However, I must accompany you, and you cannot be left unattended. Not only that, but there will be a shift change soon, and the security staff for the night will arrive. We have to get this done before then, in 15 minutes, the student explained. I'm good with that if everyone else is, Bryce agreed. Sounds good to me, Katia also agreed. I'm here for the ride, Linda remarked, flashing Dr. Briggs a seductive look. Let's do this, Zhang said, grabbing Dr. Briggs's hand, smirking at Linda. Let's, Dr. Briggs smiled, following Zhang and the student as everyone else followed in suit. They entered the storage vault through a back hall behind the gallery, a set of stairs descending into a subterranean level behind a large reinforced door. I'm saying Han, by the way. Zhang held out his hand. I'm Zhang, you know Bryce. This is Dr. Briggs, Zhang introduced her fictitious husband. How do you do? Briggs smiled. This is Katya and Victor Piotr, Zhang continued. Linda Delmore. Linda held out her hand. Oh my gosh, Linda Delmore? I have a cousin that is studying journalism, Zhang blushed once again. Really? Linda responded, honestly caught off guard. Her favorite piece was an editorial you wrote as a guest editor for CNN, Zhang explained to her. Seems you're not the only celebrity around here, Bryce. Linda pointed her finger like a six-shooter, then blew the smoke away from her fingertip barrel. Zhang cringed secretly, nearly crushing Briggs's hand. I guess you'll want me in that picture? Linda asked. Would it be a problem? Zhang confirmed with her. No, not at all. I'm sure Bryce won't mind, Linda responded sarcastically. I'd actually prefer if I had pictures with you each separately, so I can give the ones with you to my cousin. She'd love that, Zhang smiled. Wonderful. Sure, I'll do it, Linda smiled pretensively. Zhang opened the last door and they walked into the vault, where row upon row of shelving filled a room the size of a football field. Each of the shelves full of vases, artifacts, sculptures, and racks of paintings. I'm thinking that last scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Victor once again found humor in the situation, bringing a round of laughter from everyone. Katya pinched her husband's arm playfully. Ouch, you're a bit feisty today, Victor responded, smiling at his wife. All right, I think the piece you're looking for is located in this section, if you'd follow me. Zhang urged them as he closed the door through which they'd just come. Zhang proceeded down one of the rows, walking for about 30 meters before stopping in front of a rack. Zhang scanned the barcodes of each painting with his phone, as all the art had been cataloged into the university's inventory system. He pulled one of the paintings out momentarily as Dr. Briggs managed to get a peek. Du jeune fille et un enfant. That's a very famous Vietnamese painting, Dr. Briggs remarked. That one's called Du jeune fille et un enfant, Zhang explained to her. By Ngoc Van. Wait, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Dr. Briggs asked Zhang. We'll let them know when we're done here, Zhang responded hushedly.
The second painting pulled was the piece for which they were looking. This is your baby. Zhang placed the painting on a nearby display. That's the one she described. May I take a picture of it? Zhang asked Zhang. Yes, but don't let that leak anywhere or else my graduation will be on the line, Zhang explained to them. Zhang stepped back and got the painting in the view of her smartphone. She snapped several photos at high resolution, front and back, where she noticed a card attached to the back of the painting. Zhang reached for it and took a look. That's likely a catalog and description number. They're bound to the artwork with electrostatic paper, kind of like magnets that stick to anything that can have a static charge, Sang explained to Zhang. Good idea, Zhang said as she examined the card. Stuck to the card was another piece of paper, much, much older than the card itself. It contained 2 Vietnamese addresses, each followed by a trio of whole numbers. Zhang took a couple of pictures of the scrap paper and replaced it against the card. She gave them to Sang, who returned them to the painting. Sang bundled up the painting and put it back in the rack. That's your part of the deal. Now we've got to go do mine, Sang invited them. More than happy to oblige, Bryce agreed. They proceeded up the stairs, back into the front foyer and into the gallery, over to a closed section where Sang's pieces were still on display. This is the one. It took a half a day to etch with the QIL. The QIL was aimed by CNC, whose program was generated algorithmically based upon a scan of my paper drawing. This is the end result of that process, Sang explained to Bryce, who examined it closely. Kind of like a high-tech spirograph, Dr. Briggs observed. That's exactly what it is, the same idea, but the second etching head is actually photons entangled with those of the ones emitted by the laser. Their cutting angle and vector is a function of quantum spin based upon the entanglement of the photons, kind of like an invisible mirror, but parametric more so than planar, or so Professor Maxwell's paper describes. Sang tried to explain the process. I couldn't have said it better, Sang. Bryce admired the students' work. Let's get that picture. Sang pushed them impatiently with the smile on his face.
Bryce took his place on one side of Sang's artwork, while Sang took the other. Zhang used Sang's phone and took several pictures of them. Bryce then switched with Linda, and Zhang begrudgingly took a few more pictures of Linda with Sang before they were done. They thanked Sang for his help and stepped out in front of the university. Now what? Asked Katya. We report in and let Alicia know what we found. It's getting late, and we might not be able to investigate much more today, Zhang suggested. We got quite a bit, not to mention we have another important contact we can call for the next 3 days to help us solve this mystery, Bryce remarked. I'm dying to see where this address is and what these numbers are, Katya encouraged Zhang. I'd be willing to bet the numbers are latitude and longitude, the first 2 anyway, Victor suggested. That leaves the third numbers. What could they be? They're certainly not consistent with being right inclination, declination, elevation, dot products, or tangents, given the first pair of whole numbers, Zhang surmised, using her immense knowledge of mathematics. Interesting. They might be dates from Julian calendar, Katya observed, looking over Zhang's shoulder at the screen of the phone at the picture of the card. You're right, Dr. Briggs took a closer look at Zhang's photo, then handing Zhang's phone to Katya. She looked at the numbers carefully. They're dates in Julian notation. This first one is November 14, 1969 at 2:35 Indochina time, Katya began, as Bryce noted the date and time on his phone's notepad application. The second one is February 19, 1970 at 13:30 Indochina time. Katya spoke aloud as Bryce noted. We have the coordinates in space, the coordinates in time. Now we've just got to take a look, Bryce observed. Seeing as we can't take a look into the past, we'll need to go to these addresses ourselves, now. Now? Dr. Briggs confirmed. Yes, now. Why? Aren't you having fun? Zhang moved in closer to Briggs. Well, I have to admit this doesn't come close to the adventure we had at the Forbidden City, but it's certainly close, Dr. Briggs responded. If you're in for seeing this through, so am I, Linda remarked flirtatiously towards Dr. Briggs. We'll go tonight, Dr. Briggs agreed. Zhang, Katya, Linda, Briggs, Victor, and Bryce poured into another taxi van and began towards the first address. It was going to be a long night, and to add to their obstacles, someone had followed them.